Hello, healthy friends. This is Terry, coming today to talk about Chiron, the planet of the wounded warrior, healer. Chiron, the centaur. Chiron entered Aries, where Chiron is exalted and in his power in February of 2019. And we entered a time of deep healing on our planet. And many people are experiencing healing crisis at this time, but no one more than those of us having our Chiron in Aries return. So, if you were born between January of 1969 all the way through May of 1976, then somewhere along these years you are having your Chiron return. And this is where Chiron returns to the place he was when you were born as a healer. And he's bringing up a lot of those old wounds, coming up a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of old deep scars that are just coming to light, coming up to be healed. And it is a very good time for therapy, for ancestral healing, for physical healing. A lot of people having their Chiron return can even be having physical ailments or dis-ease, cancers, a lot of injuries happening during this Chiron return. And I myself am a Chiron in Aries, and I watched as Chiron crossed over 6 degrees of Aries. I couldn't wait. It was like, okay, let's just be over this. I don't want to do this work. It's heavy lifting, heavy duty healing the deepest wounds. And Chiron in Aries, he just moves slower. When Chiron is in Aries, it's like he's at home. And that is why today I film this in a cave, because that is where Chiron lived. Chiron is at home in the cave. And when Chiron enters Aries, it's like Chiron has come home to his cave, where he finds the greatest refuge, the greatest healing. And he hunkers down there for a full 8 years. So Chiron entered February 2019, and he will be in Aries until 2027. So those of us having this Chiron and Aries return, it's like we win the prize for the deepest wounds and the most to heal. And we are going to be soaking in it in this deep time of healing for a solid 8 years. And then when Chiron moves on to Taurus in 2027, late 2027 into 2028, it's like he just spends 2 years in most signs. But in our sign of Aries, he spends the longest amount of time because we have the deepest wounds. And right now, like I said, I was watching Chiron cross my degree, and I thought, ooh, it is over. I'm done. I did my homework. I turned in my healing report. I can be done now. But now Chiron has just begun to go retrograde. So it's like he healed some wounds, but there might have been something he forgot to heal. And now he's got to go back to the cave. He forgot something. So Chiron is retrograde, and we're actually in a time right now, as I film this in July 2021, we're in a time of 5 retrograde planets. We've got, and they're the big planets, power planets. We've got Saturn retrograde, Pluto retrograde, Jupiter retrograde, Neptune retrograde, and Chiron. 5 retrograde planets, really taking us back into the deep psyche. Figure things out, work on your stuff, go into therapy, get the ancestral healing. This is the message of Chiron in Aries. And Chiron in Aries, now going retrograde, is teaching us that you must repair what is broken, or you will repeat the cycles, and how many people, especially in relationships, have just repeated cycles that are tied into their wounds, right? And so you've got to go back and you've got to repair the deepest wound so that you can get out of this repetition and this repeating cycle. And this could be a really good time for anybody who's having their Chiron in Aries return to go through recovery treatment. This would be a fabulous time to get over your addictions and really get to the root cause, the source of whatever is holding you back and whatever is keeping you addicted. Chiron in Aries is great for recovery. And Chiron's deepest wound, of course, is abandonment, because Chiron himself was abandoned by his mother, and that is just the deepest wound you could ever have. His mother gave birth to him, half man, half horse, as this powerful centaur that he was. But there wasn't a lot of centaurs at that time, so you can imagine as a mother giving birth to a baby and you get this half horse baby. His mother just didn't know how to deal with it, and I have compassion for all sides of the story. That's something I think that comes with age. It's like I have compassion for his mother, not knowing, not understanding what is this creature she has just given birth to, half man, half horse. And so she rejected Chiron. She abandoned him. So when his mother, Philyra, just rejected him and abandoned him because she was terrified by his appearance, he was then adopted by Apollo and Athene, the gods and goddesses of light and healing, and they took Chiron on to be a great teacher, healer. He then stepped into who he was to become, this wounded warrior, healer, teacher. And then Chiron goes on to pay this back as he was adopted when he was abandoned. He later goes on to adopt so many children of wild nature. And in fact, it was Chiron's wild horse-like nature. He would run wild like a wild horse, and that is what drew Apollo to him. He said, oh, this child has such a wild nature. If we can harness that wild nature, we can really do something with all that energy. And so Chiron has a special affinity for horses, and you will see a lot of people who work with horses and a lot of horse healers who have a strong Chiron in Aries. And Apollo taught Chiron the ways of alchemy and bringing together nature with the divine and man and horse and all the mystical elements of making herbal potions and how to heal with energy. And then Chiron went on to find this healing cave, not unlike the cave we're at today. And in this cave, he then went on to teach so many Greek heroes the ways of alchemy and healing, but he also taught them how to ride horses, how to shoot, how to navigate by the stars. He taught Jason of the Argonauts how to sail a ship by looking at the stars. And so you could say astrology may have been started with Chiron and his studies of the stars. And every time he would get one of these wayward children, like he raised Castor and Pollux, who are the stars of the Gemini, when they were cast off, because Gemini, Castor and Pollux were born in one womb of two fathers, and that didn't go over great either. Those two fathers were not too happy about having different children in one woman's womb, so those kids were also abandoned. So every time there were these Greek gods that were abandoned, Chiron took them under his wing, and he understood their plight, and then he trained them to do great things in the arts of science, art, music, sailing, astrology. He was really a man of so many different arts that he then taught. It was kind of like the original at-risk group home in Chiron's cave. Chiron taught Orpheus, the musician who played the lyre, and he played the lyre so well he could make trees weep and rocks melt by the sound of his lyre. And he also taught I'm going to say that name wrong, Asclepius, who became the god of medicine. And this is where we get healing and medicine that we are still using today. And even Sir Isaac Newton, who had studied the stars, said that it was all begun with Chiron, the centaur, who had really navigated for Jason of Argonauts. And I think this is why perhaps astrology is having a real comeback right now. Like, people are so interested. And I know I've been studying astrology for 20 years, but I'm really into it now. As our world is changing before us, we look to the stars to guide us of what is going on right now. And so we are all tapping into that Chiron in Aries, that strong talent for looking in the stars and playing music, and we're sort of having this renaissance that is coming of this Chiron in Aries. It's not just about healing our wounds, but it's also about finding our true path in life and finding your talent. And Chiron is the healing guide who can bring you to find what it is that your true calling in life, your true passion, what you should be doing. He pulls it out of you. And if you're supposed to be writing, this is an incredible time to be writing. And it's really a rites of passage that especially those who are having their Chiron and Aries transit are going through a rites of passage of like, who am I supposed to become? And a lot of people are changing careers. We're having a huge exodus of people changing their careers or moving across country. And part of that is that Chiron in Aries return, saying, what do you really want to be doing with this life? And even our world is having this kind of rites of passage with this Chiron and Aries. And when we go through the portal, it's like a liminal space. As we go into this rites of passage with Chiron, something is ending and there is something that has not yet been born. So our whole world is seeing this rebirth with this Chiron and Aries, and a lot of things are ending. Relationships are ending, people are losing jobs. There's a lot of endings, but within that ending is a seed of a new beginning, a seed of renewal, a seed of hope, a seed of rebirth. And these kinds of rites of passage have really disappeared from our culture and the West, and so Chiron is asking us to go deep within and unlock these sacred warrior healing lessons that we do have within us from our ancestors. And so this is a real time of tapping into those ancestral healing with the Chiron and Aries, and just trying to learn the old ways, the old rites of passage, more of the Native American sort of tribal healings that exist still today. And as Chiron continues his orbit, Chiron has one of the most chaotic orbits ever. You can actually go on, I think, Wikipedia, and it shows Chiron's orbit, and it is like, woo, all over the place, and it's chaos. And it's a little bit like you are on a trail and the trail drops out, and you have to try to go, oh wait, I gotta go over here, and then you could just get lost. And Chiron wants you to get lost, because it is in getting lost that you will be found. And it's all part of the rites of passage. So as we go through, we're navigating this Chiron and Aries all the way till 2027. And then we've got Neptune retrograde. There can be a lot of confusion as we try to heal these wounds of like, I thought I was going this way, but now I'm going that way. And we're rebirthing, but it's not a straight line. And it's a very liminal labyrinth, winding. Like when you go on a labyrinth, it feels like you're not really going anywhere. You're just winding all around until you find the center. And so Chiron asks you, even in his chaotic orbit, to find your center now. One of the reasons Chiron's orbit is so chaotic is that Chiron is being pulled in by the gravity of Saturn. And Saturn, as we know, had such a big part to play in all of 2020. And Saturn is all about rules, regulations, order, lockdowns, karmic lessons. And so Chiron wants us to heal. Chiron wants us to find our center and untap the deep ancestral healing that resides within and heal these broken patterns that we keep repeating. And Saturn, the great karmic teacher, is saying, whoop, nope, you got to go over here. I'm going to pull you over here. So Saturn is almost like pulling the puppet strings of Chiron, the centaur, wounded warrior healer. And so when we have Saturn influencing, and especially right now when we've got Chiron retrograde, and we've got Saturn retrograde, and Saturn's gravity is pulling Chiron, and Chiron's retrograde. Oh, it's just a big hot mess. So you might be feeling that. If you're feeling spun out and you're trying to heal something and it's not working out and it feels like everything's all over the place, this is why. And until 2027, we're going to be in this chaotic healing orbit where we're trying to get to our center and we're trying to learn the lessons, and Saturn is also pulling us. And Chiron in Aries also rules over suicide. And since February of 2019, when Chiron entered Aries, we have seen such an increase in suicide, even among the celebrities like Anthony Bourdain. And there's so much interest in figuring out the why of the suicide. And unfortunately, we are seeing a lot more of our young teenagers with a mental health crisis. And if you've had a baby in this time, since February of 2019 until now, another thing we're seeing is a lot of babies and small children with healing crisis. I know I do prenatal massage, and I've had so many moms with babies in the NICU this year with crazy situations, anything from seizure to a baby that had a stroke at birth. I mean, these are like really unusual occurrences that are happening to these babies being born. But these babies are coming in. These babies are wounded warrior healer teachers. These are some profound spiritual light warriors who are here coming in strong. They are going to change their world, but it's a bit of a bumpy road for them as they enter in with this Chiron and Aries. We can see a lot of health crisis in these babies that are being born. And that's okay. They will pull through. If you have a baby who's gone through something in its early childhood, that's part of the gift of Chiron and Aries. That early wounding. I think of like Brandi Carlile, who had been in the hospital as a child, almost didn't pull through, and look at the amazing music she is creating today. It's really coming from source, and she is a true wounded warrior healer teacher as well. Getting back to that Chiron in Aries as having that wild nature, I would say somebody born of Chiron in Aries is incredibly rebellious. They're not going to go the normal route, and they're probably going to be an entrepreneur or self-employed. Aries is all about the self, and Chiron does what he wants. And I just love this quote by Paulo Coelho, who wrote The Alchemist. And he wrote, "A warrior of light is never predictable. He is not afraid to weep over ancient sorrows or to feel joy at new discoveries. A warrior does not spend his days trying to play the role that others would choose for him. He will forge his own path forward." And that to me just exactly describes this wounded warrior healer that is Chiron, the centaur. He's on his own journey. He's not looking back. And, those of us born with Chiron and Aries are more like 7th generation healers. We are healing the wounds of our entire 7th generation back, our ancestral wounds. We may be the black sheep of the family. Nobody can understand us, how weird we are. We've got crystals and astrology, and you're so weird. And meanwhile, we are like Chiron in the cave doing the deep ancestral healing work for all of those wounds. And many people with Chiron and Aries have their own wounds to contend with. I know myself, I've been a migraine client or migraine person my whole life, and I think that's what helps me become a really good massage therapist, Reiki master, teacher, healer, is that I know pain. And you have to know pain to be a healer. And somebody with a Chiron and Aries is someone you may not believe has pain. I know most people probably wouldn't know the level of excruciating pain I've experienced in my life, because Chiron and Aries will never show it. Chiron and Aries will eat their pain like it was a bowl of Wheaties. It's only going to make them stronger, and they eat their pain in the morning and they trudge on ahead and they get the work done and they show up and they're present, and you would never know that beneath the smile that Chiron and Aries is really suffering in deep pain, just like we saw with Anthony Bourdain. So many people did not know his pain, as he was this incredible host and always seemed happy-go-lucky on his travels. The problem when Chiron and Aries people will just go on with their life and ignoring their pain is that there can be some stuffing of, I didn't process that, I'll get to it later. You go through something painful and we'll just stuff it down and we'll get to that later. And this Chiron and Aries transit, this return that so many people are having, this is later. This is Chiron and Aries saying, you stuffed some stuff down there and it's like the disposal is broken and you need to pull everything out and start dealing with all this stuff. You can't stuff it anymore. It is time to let things come to light and maybe do some journaling and some therapy and some healing in a very deep way to uncover all the situations and things that you didn't take the time to heal, and now they are resurfacing to be processed. And so this can be a wonderful time of unraveling old hurts, old wounds, and Chiron and Aries is not going to let you stuff it down this time. Once a Chiron in Aries has dealt with their inner wounds and trauma and healed completely, they will make the best healers, teachers, caregivers, therapists, psychologists, social workers. Chiron and Aries love to give back once they have attained that level of healer, heal thyself, and then they can go on to be profound teachers of healing. And so we will be seeing a lot of profound teachings in healing, and maybe even new modalities coming up and new ways to heal the body, as we are collectively in a kind of healing crisis right now with this pandemic. In the 70s, when so many of these Chiron and Aries people were born, myself included, this was a time when we had so many 7th generation healers coming on the planet. And then as we merged into the 80s and 90s, the coming of age of these Chiron and Aries people, we really saw a lot of self-wounding, which is interesting because in shamanic studies, they would say all the piercings. I mean, in the 80s and 90s, we saw the big giant piercings and the tattoos and the face tattoos and the all kinds of pierce everything, your nipples and all your body parts. And this was a kind of way of Chiron and Aries expressing itself, of pulling up the deep deep ancestral wounds of the 7th generation and making them visible. This was a way of bringing what is hidden pain, hidden wounds, and bringing it to the surface to be seen and healed. There is a great documentary called 7th Generation, and it is all about the Lakota tribes that are trying to heal their 7 generations of ancestral wounds during this time as well. And they are trying to restore the sacred hoop, to heal our entire world, and to bring back the white buffalo. And I highly recommend, this is such a Chiron in Aries documentary, the 7th Generation it's called, and I'll put a link below. But there is a Native American prophecy which states that when the planets of healing are discovered, and many believe that Chiron is this planet of healing that has been discovered. When the planet of healing is discovered in the sky, the sacred warrior teachings will return to Earth. And some believe those planets are Chiron and his wife Jericho. And Chiron spent his whole life trying to heal himself, healer, heal thyself. But it was really Jericho, his wife, who finally brought him peace and healing of all of his deep abandonment issues and his family trauma. And Jericho was able to give him the gift of spontaneous healing. And Jericho is coming in so strong right now. That's a whole nother recording all about Jericho, Chiron's wife, the goddess, sacred healer, who finally healed Chiron. But Chiron was discovered on November 1st, 1977, just as Chiron entered Taurus. And so we've only just discovered Chiron in the 70s, and he really is bringing these sacred healings, these teachings to help us heal our ancestral wounds. And if you think about the New Age movement began in late 70s, a lot of people joining in communes. We had Earth Day started in the late 70s as well. All of this could be Chiron making his presence known on Earth. And perhaps even more important discovery with Chiron was the return of the sacred warrior consciousness through more martial arts. Really had a moment coming into being in the late 70s. And that is when we started having so much more Kung Fu and Tai Chi and Aikido, and that martial arts would also be ruled by Chiron. And that martial arts really had its heyday starting in the 70s and still continuing on today. And the term martial arts, of course, refers to Mars, but I would say it's also very tied to Chiron, because Chiron was a dancer as a horse, and he loved to fight as well. To be a true warrior, one must first learn to dance. And the most important dance, Chiron would say, is to dance with your own ego. So this can be a tough time, this Chiron in Aries, but it can also lead to such deep inner healing if you can embrace the journey of healing. And I know so many health providers are seeing so many people who are taking their health into their hands. I know as a massage therapist, I am so booked out right now with people who really want to do the deeper healing work. And I think that Reiki is also having a heyday with this Chiron in Aries. And I did a little research digging back to the fact that in the 1920s, when Mikao Usui was on the mountain and he meditated for 21 days, and he was on the mountain, and he the golden light came to him, and it was Reiki, and he got the downloads of the Reiki symbols. Well, that also corresponded with Chiron in Aries transit. So you could also say that Reiki was born of this Chiron in Aries. It's just such a potent time for developing new energy systems, new ways of healing. And if you are curious, if you think you might be having a Chiron in Aries transit yourself, and you want to know more about the degrees of Chiron in Aries, or you just want to see where your Chiron is, you can always order an astrology chart from me. I'll put the link down below for how to order astrology chart, or you can download free astrology charts online too, and just look for your Chiron and see where this Chiron in Aries transit will be crossing over for you. Thank you, and thank you for learning more about Chiron. I really enjoy being in this cave for Chiron. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.